5 important question in .NET Developer Interview 1. What is .NET? .NET is a free, open-source, cross-platform development platform from Microsoft. It is used to build web application, APIs, desktop applications, cloud applications, and other types of software. ASP.NET Core is the web framework used to build 5 important questions. Look in this diagram. .NET is a cross-platform development platform that helps developers build different types of applications, such as web applications, cloud applications, desktop applications, APIs, and services. Developers write code mainly using C#, while the .NET platform provides the runtime, libraries, and common functionality required to build and run these applications. The .NET Runtime, CLR, executes the application code, while the libraries and base class library provide reusable features. Modern .NET applications can run across Windows, Linux, macOS, Docker, and cloud environments, and developers can use tools such as Visual Studio, VS Code, Azure, NuGet, and JetBrains. Look in this. 2. What is dependency injection in ASP.NET Core? 2. What is dependency injection in ASP.NET Core? Dependency injection is a design pattern used to provide required dependencies to a class from outside instead of creating them inside the class. ASP.NET Core has built-in dependency injection, which helps achieve loose. 2. This diagram explains dependency injection, D, in ASP.NET Core, which is a design pattern where a class receives its required dependencies from outside instead of creating them itself. Without D, user service directly creates email service using new email service, which creates tight coupling and makes testing and maintenance difficult. With D, user service depends on the IE-mail service interface, and the required email service implementation is provided by the ASP.NET Core D container. The service is first registered in program.cs, for example using add scope less than IE-mail service, email service greater than, then, when a request comes into the application, the D container creates and injects the required dependency into user service. This results in loose coupling, easier unit testing, and easier maintenance or replacement of implementation. 3. What is middleware in ASP.NET Core? Middleware is a component in the ASP.NET Core request pipeline that processes HTTP requests and responses. Multiple middleware components can be arranged in a specific order. Examples include authentication, authorization, exception handling, logging, and routing middleware. 3. This diagram explains the ASP.NET Core middleware pipeline, where multiple middleware components process an HTTP request and response in a specific order. When an HTTP request enters the application, it first passes through exception handling middleware to handle errors, then logging middleware records request and response information, followed by authentication middleware to verify the user's identity, and authorization middleware to check whether the user has permission to access the requested resource. Next, routing middleware determines which endpoint should handle the request, and finally the endpoint middleware executes the selected controller, Razor page, or API. After the endpoint generates a response, the response travels back through the middleware pipeline in reverse order, allowing each middleware to perform any required processing before the response is sent back to the client. Therefore, the order in which middleware is registered is very important because it determines how requests and responses are processed. 4. What is the difference between IEnumerable and iQueryable? IEnumerable is mainly used for working with data that is already in memory, while iQueryable is designed for querying data from an external data source such as a database. With Entity Framework Core, iQueryable allows the query to be translated into SQL and executed by the database. 4. His diagram explains the difference between IEnumerable and iQueryable in ASP.NET Core with Entity Framework Core. IEnumerable is mainly used when the data is already loaded into application memory. For example, when toList is called first, the database data is retrieved and then where filters the records in memory, which can use more memory when the dataset is large. In contrast, iQueryable allows the LINQ query to be built first and translated by Entity Framework Core into SQL, so the database performs the filtering and returns only the required records to the application. Therefore, IEnumerable is suitable for working within memory collections, while iQueryable is generally preferred when querying databases because it can reduce unnecessary data transfer and allow the database to perform the filtering. 5. What is JWT authentication? JWT, or JSON Web Token, is a token-based authentication mechanism commonly used for securing web APIs. After successful login, the server generates a token and sends it to the client. The client sends the token with subsequent requests, and the server validates it before allowing access to protected resources. 5. This diagram explains the JWT, JSON Web Token, authentication flow used to secure web APIs. First, the client or user sends their username and password to the server, and the server validates the credentials. If the login is successful, the server generates a JWT token and sends it back to the client, which stores the token. For subsequent requests to protected APIs, the client sends the JWT in the authorization header using the bearer scheme. The server then validates the token, including its signature and claims, and if the token is valid, the server grants access to the requested resource and returns the response to the client. JWT consists of a header, payload, and signature, where the payload contains claims such as user ID, role, and expiration time. The main benefit is that authentication can be stateless, meaning the server does not need to maintain traditional session information for every client.